Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros, it's Drew here, and today I will be doing a full in-depth review of Journey to Atlantis at SeaWorld San Diego. So Journey to Atlantis is a Mack water coaster that opened originally in 2003 at SeaWorld San Diego and was the first major coaster at the park. Now, there are other rides at the other SeaWorld parks called Journey to Atlantis, and they are all three Mack water coasters, but they all three have different layouts as well as storylines. So SeaWorld San Diego's is kind of the middle ground out of the three. It is longer than the SeaWorld San Antonio version, but it is shorter than the SeaWorld Orlando version and has a little less theming compared to the Orlando version, but more compared to the San Antonio version. But in this past year, it was refurbished with a complete retracking of its second drop, as well as a new paint job was added, and this is actually when I first got my ride on it, was after this refurbishment, so I don't really know too much about what it was like before, but I will tell you how it is now. Now, first of all, we got to figure out how to get there. So once you get through the entrance of SeaWorld San Diego, you want to walk past the Starbucks on the right-hand side and then take a right through the Ocean Explorer section of the park and keep following that main pathway past Tentacle Twirl, as well as an octopus and electric eel exhibit. And then once you come up to Electric Eel's entrance, the roller coaster done by Premier Rides, you want to walk past that as well as the lockers right there, as well as the bathrooms, and you want to bypass the entrance to the Nautilus amphitheater right there until you make a right once you get past Electric Eel, the actual coaster itself, not the queue line, and there you will see Journey to Atlantis in its full newly painted glory. Now, the entrance is actually just to the left side of the drop, so you want to go all the way to the main building that you can see, that main tower, and be just to the left of it for that entrance. Now, speaking of the entrance, once you go through it, you will see some pretty elaborate theming, in all honesty, around you to make you feel like you've traveled to the lost city of Atlantis, the mythical city of old that is said to be stuck underwater and ruled by either Poseidon, Neptune, or Triton, depending on which story you're focusing on specifically. And you will encounter some switchbacks inside there, as well as a TV telling you a little bit of the new backstory that they've added in as of this past year, where you will be exploring Atlantis as a diver, or at least something along those lines. That's what I could gather from what was said in the video. But once you do that, you will turn right and then go through kind of a covered section of the queue until you actually reach an outdoor portion, which does have a nice little centerpiece that you will circle around until you get to the station. Now, the station doesn't really have any covering above it, which can be a blessing and a curse depending on how the day is and depending if you've just gotten off or are just about to get on. So there's not really any shade right there. Now, if you're just getting off, it's great, but if you're just about to get on, it might be a little hot in that section, but luckily enough, you hopefully will be going through that section quite quickly. Now, each row is 2 people wide, so the actual car, the boat, can fit 8 people in total because there are 4 rows on this car. Now, once you've sat down and you're actually quite comfortable seat, you will need to pull down a lap bar that is actually quite thin, but then you will notice that there's this weird grip handle that is way too big to be able to be held onto, but it is there nonetheless, and I'm still confused by it to this day and why it's so massive, but it is a nice barrier for when you hit some hard stops later on in the ride, but we'll get to that in just a moment. But once you're sat down, your restraint's down, you get dispatched, and that means you're going to go straight up a lift hill, which does offer some nice views of the surrounding San Diego area, as well as the park itself. But once you're up this lift hill and you crest it, you will make an interesting little Outer Bank turn, which goes to the right, but this does have a little bit of joltiness. It does kind of bounce up and down and rattles quite a bit. It's probably the most uncomfortable part of the ride, but I do like the fact that it is an Outer Bank turn, so you kind of get that illusion that you might be tipping over to the outside and falling out. But once you've completed that turn, you will go under a covering of the largest tower, and you will plummet down the first drop, which is really the centerpiece of the ride from the inside of the park. It is the most photogenic area of the ride for sure, and you will hit this splashdown at full speed, and the drop itself is actually quite enjoyable. No real airtime, but it's a good drop. It makes your stomach kind of clench up a little bit, and that's all I can ask for. But once you hit the water, depending on the day, you might slam into the water or you might glide along for a little bit. But a nice feature about this ride is that it can be used as both a roller coaster or a boat. So you will be on coaster track until you hit the water, and once you hit the water, you start floating in a boat, which is a really cool change. And do be wary, there are water cannons that guests can pay for to get riders even more wet. So don't be surprised if you get even more wet after that first initial drop. And I would say this is arguably the second most wet you'll get on this ride, but we'll talk about the first eventually. But after you make that plunge into the water, you will make a left turn 180 degrees around a centerpiece sign that says Atlantis, and it looks really nice. But after that, you'll have a good 2-3 minutes on this boat to take your time to dry off a little bit until you reach a dark tunnel, which then you will go back onto the roller coaster track and into this dark room inside one of the towers. There is some nice theming inside, but soon after you sit there for a good 20 seconds or so, a gate will open and you will go inside to this pitch black room, which will then have the gate close behind you. And then you're on an elevator lift, meaning you will be going straight up. And it's a really cool experience. If you haven't experienced it before, it does tilt to the left or right just a tiny bit and can freak you out a little bit. But that's because there are two separate elevator lifts and they have to bypass each other when one is going down and one is going up. But it's a really cool effect. Now, when I rode it, I didn't have any effects. There was no sound for me whatsoever. So usually there are show elements in these two sections, these two little rooms, including the elevator lift, but I had no effects whatsoever when I rode. So I really don't know what those are truthfully like. So if anyone would like to describe them down in the comment section, please go ahead and do. Now, once you've reached the top, depending on if you're the first boat or the second boat in the elevator, because it does fit two, you will have a gate open in front of you, and then you will be let out into the open air to the main roller coaster portion of the ride, which is a plunging right turn, which almost kind of looks like an upside down inclined loop. But the right turn is probably the most thrilling part of the attraction, and honestly is probably my favorite part of the attraction. It does have a little bit of a jitter, but it's pretty smooth in all honesty. And this whole section was the redone track, so it is quite nice looking with its repaint. But after you go through this right turn and go up a little bit, you will hit a mid-course brake run, ready to send the boat behind you if you're the first boat. But soon after that, you will take a plunge to the right and then a swooping left turn, which is honestly the most thrilling part of the ride, I would say, besides the first drop. And then you hit the second splashdown element, and I would say this is the most wet part of the ride because there's a lot less room for that water to move around. So where's it gonna go? Oh, right, onto the boat and onto you. But it's really nice to have that cool splashdown right there before you make a little left turn into the station itself. Now, Journey to Atlantis is my first Mack water coaster, and I really enjoyed it. I did. It definitely isn't my favorite ride at SeaWorld San Diego, but it is a really good ride. And I really enjoyed my time on it. I got 2 rides on it, both in the front row. And it was very comfortable, as well as pretty smooth throughout. And it got us quite wet on a 65-degree day, which was not our best decision. But once you exit the ride, you'll take a right down some stairs and go underground underneath the track, as well as part of the building, until you take stairs upward after passing where you can get your photo. By the way, there is an on-ride photo on that first drop, that first plunge. And once you get up those stairs, you will reach a nice ray aquarium, and it looks really beautiful. It's a lovely reveal after riding the ride. But Journey to Atlantis is a very solid family coaster for sure. Honestly, I'd say it's a family ride. I do believe it's a coaster. I do have it on my coaster count, but it really is a combination of a flume type ride and a coaster. I guess that's why it's called a water coaster, right? But it's pretty enjoyable. So let's talk about my rankings for it. So I have a weird system where I rate the intensity out of 5 stars, the fun out of 5 stars, and then I give it a ski slope rating. So pretty much depending on how experienced you are with coaster riding, you should be before you get on, as well as an overall score out of 10. So to start this off, I want to talk about intensity, and this really just pertains to the gravitational forces that you will feel on the ride. And in all honesty, it's probably only a 1, potentially 2 stars. It really is not the most intense thing. The most intense moments of the ride are that final left bank turn into the second splashdown, as well as that first drop. Everything else is not really intense at all. And I would honestly say it's probably the least intense coaster in the park. But going on to fun, I would say this is a good 2 to 3 stars. It's definitely not the most fun thing in the park. It's almost relaxing, in all honesty, to me, because a good 2/3 of the ride are actually just floating in the flume. It really just kind of feels like a relaxing boat ride for a good portion of it. That doesn't mean it's not a good ride. It just means it's not all about that action-packed fun that you might see on some other coasters in the park. Now let's go to the ski slope rating, and I would honestly say this could be for beginner riders. So that means it's a green circle. I don't know if this should be your first ride. I definitely wouldn't recommend it being your first ride ever, but it could potentially be your first coaster at the park. The only thing you'd have to get familiar with is the fact that you'd be up high. It is quite tall. It is the second tallest coaster in the park, but that's really the only thing you'd have to worry about. I mean, of course, the big drop is quite scary, and that reveal after the elevator lift is as well, but I would definitely say this is a lot easier to ride than something like Manta or Tidal Twister, and especially Electric Eel. Electric Eel is definitely the most extreme coaster in the park, I would say. But Journey to Atlantis is a true family ride in pretty much all aspects, but that really doesn't hinder the ride at all. Now let's go over to my overall rating, and I'm going to have to give this a 6 or 7 on a hot day out of 10. Now, this obviously isn't my favorite coaster in the park, and it isn't my second favorite coaster in the park, but it is still very enjoyable, and it's not a bad ride to break up those Manta or Electric Eel marathons that you might be having. It's the perfect ride for a hot day, and I would say the only other ride that rivals it in wetness, or should I really say blows it out of the water, at the park is Shipwreck Rapids. But if that ride isn't open, or has a 2-hour wait, definitely go check out Journey to Atlantis. This in no means is a bad ride. I would say bad rides for me are a 3 out of 10 and below. Okay rides are 4 and 5. Now once we get to 6 and up, I would say that's good. It is a good ride. There's nothing wrong with it. Do I wish the coaster portion was a little longer? Yeah, probably. Do I also wish that there were maybe some more effects? Yeah, definitely. But I'm sure those will be fixed in the near future. And I can't wait to go ride it again and hopefully see some of these effects as well as get audio, because I didn't have the best ride, obviously, because I did not have audio or any effects. But I really can't wait to get back on it to get a better opinion on the ride. And hopefully I can do that very soon. But I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Journey to Atlantis at SeaWorld San Diego. Make sure to leave down your thoughts on the ride down below, because I'd love to see your guys' thoughts. But make sure to subscribe if you haven't. We're going to have tons more reviews in the next week or so alone, as well as tons more content from all of Southern California's theme parks. But until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.